England, 1816. The rain drummed against the window panes of Thornfield Library, creating a melancholy melody that echoed throughout the immense mansion. Catherine Peton, Duchess of Thornfield, stood motionless before the window, watching the drops slide down the glass like silent tears. 3 years had passed since that fateful night, 3 years since the doors of her husband's heart had closed to her like a sealed mausoleum. She was young when she accepted the marriage proposal from Dominic Blackwood, Duke of Thornfield, only 19 with naive dreams of love and marital bliss. He was 28, one of England's most eligible bachelors, with amber eyes that seemed to see through one's soul and a bearing that commanded respect in any drawing room. The marriage had been arranged by her parents, a mutually beneficial arrangement, but Catherine had allowed herself to dream that it could blossom into something more. During the first few months there had been signs of hope. Dominic was courteous, sometimes even attentive. They chatted over dinner, strolled through the gardens at dusk, and Catherine felt her heart expand with each rare smile he gave her. She began to believe that perhaps with patience and dedication she could win the genuine affection of this enigmatic man. Then came that terrible night 3 years ago. Catherine closed her eyes, trying to dispel the memory that haunted her like a persistent spectre. Dominic's birthday party, the distinguished guests, the champagne flowing freely, and she, foolish and naive, sharing an innocent conversation with Lord Edmund Hastings on the terrace, laughing at an anecdote about his travels to France. She hadn't noticed Dominic watching them from the shadows, hadn't noticed the expression solidifying on his face until it was too late. Later that evening, when the guests had departed and she had gone to find him in his office, she had found a transformed man. His amber eyes burned with something dark and indecipherable, his jaw set like granite. "You embarrassed me tonight, Catherine," he had said, each word sharp as shards of ice. "Showing off to Hastings like a woman without decorum." "Dominic, I was just talking," she protested, stunned by the accusation. There was nothing inappropriate. His voice boomed through the room, making her flinch. "I saw the way you looked at him, the way you hung on his every word. Do you think I'm blind?" Nothing Catherine had said made any difference. Dominic had accused her of emotional infidelity, of lusting after another man, of tarnishing the Thornfield name with her behavior. She had cried, begged, and sworn her innocence, but he had remained adamant, his words growing increasingly cruel, digging deep wounds into her heart. Since that night, he had kept his distance from her. He had moved his quarters to the opposite wing of the mansion. He ate meals in his study. He avoided any social events that required them to appear together. When they passed in the hallways, he greeted her with formal coolness, as if she were a stranger staying in his home. Catherine had become a ghost duchess, existing on the margins of her own life. A sigh escaped her lips as she turned away from the window. The library had become her refuge during those 3 lonely years. Between the pages of books, she found solace and companionship that reality denied her. Poetry by Lord Byron, novels by Anne Radcliffe, philosophical treatises that challenged her mind and kept her sanity intact. "Your Grace," the soft voice of Margaret, her lady-in-waiting, echoed from the doorway. "Tea is served in the pink drawing-room." "Thank you, Margaret. I'll be there in a moment," Catherine replied, smoothing the folds of her lavender dress. Even in her solitude, she kept up appearances, dressing impeccably, combing her brown hair carefully, fulfilling all the duties of a duchess. It was all she had left, this quiet dignity. Margaret hesitated on the threshold. At 50, with grey hair and kind eyes, she had been the only constant in Catherine's turbulent life. "Forgive my boldness, Your Grace, but I have received word from the servants. His Grace the Duke will return from London later today." Catherine's heart skipped a beat. Dominic had been away for nearly a month, taking care of business in the capital. She had grown accustomed to the melancholy peace of his absence, the space to breathe without the constant weight of his rejection. "I see," she managed, keeping her voice steady. "What time do you expect him to arrive?" "Before dinner, according to the messenger." Catherine nodded, dismissing Margaret with a gentle gesture. Alone again, she allowed her shoulders to slump, her mask of composure slipping for a moment. Dominic would return, and with him would return the tension that permeated every room in the mansion, the icy silence that was worse than any harsh word. The rest of the day was spent preparing. Catherine instructed the housekeeper to prepare Dominic's rooms, ensured his favorite dishes were included on the dinner menu, and arranged fresh flowers in his study. Small courtesies he probably wouldn't notice, but which she insisted on offering, an invisible bridge spanning the chasm between them. As dusk tinged the sky with violet and gold, Catherine heard the unmistakable sound of the carriage approaching down the oak-lined avenue. She stood in the grand entrance hall, hands clasped in front of her, her posture erect, every inch the immaculate Duchess. The doors opened and Dominic entered, bringing with him the scent of rain and leather. He looked tired, Catherine noted, observing the shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his broad shoulders. Yet he remained devastatingly handsome, with his dark hair slightly tousled from travel and his strong jaw marked by a shadow of stubble. "Welcome back, Your Grace," Catherine greeted, her voice clear and polite. "I hope your trip was productive." Dominic's amber eyes flicked over her briefly, a quick, indifferent assessment before shifting away. "It was tolerable," he replied, handing his hat and gloves to the butler. "I'll have dinner in my study. You don't need to bother keeping me company." The words were predictable, but they still stuck like tiny arrows. Catherine kept her smile steady. "As you wish. Preparations are ready should you change your mind." He didn't answer, simply crossed the hall toward the corridor that led to his private wing, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble. Catherine stood there, watching him disappear, feeling the familiar chill seep into her bones. That night, unable to sleep, Catherine found herself wandering the mansion's silent corridors. Her feet led her to the music room, a room she rarely visited during the day, for fear of disturbing Dominic. But at night, in the quiet hours, when everyone else was asleep, she sometimes came here to play the piano, letting the music express everything words couldn't. She sat on the bench, lighting a single candle. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play a melancholy melody that flowed from her heart directly into the instrument. She lost herself in the music, forgetting where she was, forgetting her loneliness, existing only in the notes that filled the air. She didn't notice Dominic standing in the doorway, watching her from the shadows. Dominic hadn't been able to sleep. Business in London had been exhausting, but it wasn't physical fatigue that kept him awake. It was the weight of guilt he'd carried for 3 years, the growing knowledge that he had destroyed something precious out of baseless pride and jealousy. He had heard the music flowing through the halls and followed the sound, discovering Catherine at the piano. The sight took his breath away. She was wrapped only in a silk robe, her hair loosely cascading over her shoulders, completely absorbed in the music. There was something intensely intimate about watching her like this, vulnerable and unguarded. The melody she was playing was heartbreaking, speaking of loneliness and longing, of withered dreams and buried hopes. Dominic realized with painful clarity that he was listening to the expression of his wife's soul, a soul he himself had deeply wounded. As the last note faded, Catherine remained motionless, her hands poised on the keys. Then, as if sensing his presence, she turned abruptly. "Dominic!" Her eyes widened, a blush rising in her cheeks. "I didn't know you were there. Forgive me for disturbing you." "It's not a disturbance," he said, his voice rough. "It was beautiful. I didn't know you played." A sad smile curved her lips. "There are many things you don't know about me, Your Grace. You never asked." The simple truth of those words hit him like a physical blow. She was right. In 4 years of marriage, 3 of which were spent in glacial distance, he had never bothered to know the woman who bore his name and inhabited his home. "Catherine," he began, unsure how to continue. She rose from the bench, pulling her robe tighter around herself. "It's late. I must retire. Good evening, Your Grace." She passed him quickly, leaving only the scent of lavender in her wake. Dominic stood alone in the music room, the silence now oppressive where moments before there had been beauty. Something had changed in that moment. A fissure had opened in the defenses he had so carefully built, and for the first time in 3 years, Dominic allowed himself to question whether the distance he had maintained had been protection or simply cowardice. The following days brought a subtle but noticeable change. Dominic found himself observing Catherine when he thought she wasn't noticing. He noticed how she bit her lower lip when concentrating, how her eyes lit up when discussing her roses with the gardener, the natural grace with which she moved through the rooms. She was extraordinary, he realized with belated shock, not in obvious ways but in her quiet strength, her unshakable dignity, her ability to find joy despite the loneliness he had imposed. One morning, almost a week after his return, Dominic found the courage to approach her in the gardens. Catherine was kneeling among the rose beds, her gloved hands tending the plants with evident dedication. "The roses are beautiful this year," he commented, stopping a few steps away. Catherine looked up in surprise. Dominic had never come to the gardens during her work hours. "Thank you. The apricot variety is new. I had it brought in from France. Are they your favorites?" She hesitated, studying him warily. "Yes, the color reminds me of a summer sunset, and the scent is especially sweet." Dominic watched her return to her work. There was something meditative in her movements, a peace he rarely witnessed. "You spend a lot of time here." "It's peaceful," Catherine said simply. "And roses require nothing but care and patience, unlike some people." She didn't need to say it, but the implication hung between them. "Catherine, about that night—" She stiffened, her hand stilling. "Please no, if you've come to offer pity or revive old accusations, I'd rather you didn't. I found a precarious peace these past 3 years. Don't disturb it unnecessarily." "What if I came to do neither?" he pressed, moving closer. "What if I came to say I was unfair?" Green eyes met his, wary as a deer, ready to bolt. "Unfair? You accused me of infidelity based on nothing. You turned our home into a prison of silence. You treated me like a stranger for 3 years. And now you use that word?" Raw emotion finally found a voice. This wasn't the restrained Catherine he knew. This was a woman at the end of her tether. "You're right," Dominic admitted, the words taking immense effort. "I was cruel, and I have no excuse other than irrational jealousy and fear." "Fear of what?" "Afraid of losing you." The words came out raw and honest. "Afraid that you'd realize you deserve more than I offered and look elsewhere." The silence that followed was thick. Catherine stared at him with disbelief and confusion. "You never had me, Dominic. How could you lose me? You kept your distance from the beginning, treating our marriage as an unpleasant obligation." She shook her head, tears shining but not falling. "I can't do this now. Not after 3 years of building defenses to survive. If you want to talk, you'll need to give me time, lots of time." Before he could respond, she hurried past, practically fleeing. Dominic stood alone among the roses, the sweet scent now almost cloying, a reminder of everything he had destroyed. Catherine locked herself in her quarters for the rest of the day. She needed to process the disturbing conversation, understand its meaning. 3 years of solitude, and now Dominic appeared speaking of fear and loss, as if he were entitled to such emotions. Part of her wanted to believe in change. Another part, the one that had survived the last 3 years, whispered caution. Dominic had hurt her deeply. What guarantee did she have that he wouldn't do it again? It was only at dusk that Anne brought news. "Your Grace, I believe His Grace did not dine." The tray returned untouched from the study. Catherine frowned. Dominic was meticulous about his meals. For him to skip dinner was unusual. "Is he sick?" "Just thoughtful, according to Mr. Morris." Catherine dismissed Anne, her thoughts troubled. It wasn't her responsibility to ensure Dominic was fed. He was perfectly capable of taking care of himself, and yet, before she could reconsider, she found herself wrapping a shawl and leaving. The mansion was silent as she walked through the halls toward Dominic's wing. She paused before the door to his office, her hand raised to knock, hesitating. The door opened before she could decide. Dominic stood there, clearly surprised. He'd removed his coat and tie, his shirt open at the collar, his hair disheveled. There was something vulnerable about his unkempt appearance. "Catherine, I wasn't expecting you. I heard you didn't have dinner. I came to check if you were okay." Something flashed across his eyes. "Come in." She hesitantly entered the masculine territory of leather and polished wood. The untouched tray confirmed Anne's story. "You should eat. It's not healthy to skip meals." Dominic moved to the window. I had no appetite. Our conversation earlier disturbed me more than I expected. Catherine didn't know what to say. She stood there uncomfortable, wondering why she had come. "Will you play for me again?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" He turned. "Piano. That night in the music room. It was the most beautiful thing I've heard in years. Will you play again?" Catherine studied his face, searching for signs of mockery. She found only disconcerting sincerity. "I suppose so, if you really wish. I desire it." Without another word, they went to the music room. Catherine lit the same candle and sat on the bench with slightly trembling hands, aware of Dominic watching her every move. For a moment, she froze. Playing had always been her most private form of expression. Doing so with Dominic as an audience felt like exposing herself dangerously. But then she began, letting the music flow. She chose a Mozart sonata, something less melancholic, but still charged with emotion. Gradually, she lost herself in the melody, forgetting Dominic, forgetting everything but the music. When it was over, the silence was different. Catherine kept her hands on the keys, reluctant to break the spell. Then she felt Dominic move behind her. "Where did you learn?" His voice came too close, sending shivers down her spine. "My governess was a musician. She said that music was the language of the soul, that when words failed, notes spoke truth." "And what truths do your notes speak, Catherine?" The question was too intimate. She stood abruptly, putting distance between them. "It's late. You should eat." "Don't run away from me," Dominic said. "I spent 3 years making you run away. I don't want that anymore." Catherine turned slowly. "What do you want, Dominic? Because I don't understand. 3 years of silence, and now suddenly you want intimate conversations. What's changed?" He took a step closer. "I've changed. Or maybe I finally opened my eyes. I saw you playing alone and realized I'd been living with a stranger I'd made into one because of my foolish pride." He moved closer until he was almost touching her. "These 3 years have been hell, Catherine. Hell I created. But having you this close now, being able to talk, to see you, I realized that hell was having none of that." His hand lifted, fingers tracing her cheek. "You asked me what changed. Everything changed. You changed, or I finally changed enough to see you for who you really are." Catherine's heart was pounding. "And what do I look like?" "Strong. Stronger than I realized. Kind, despite all the reasons to be cruel. Intelligent, passionate, beautiful, inside and out." He leaned closer. "And completely, irrevocably loved by me." Catherine held her breath, tears welling up. "Dominic, I love you," he said, the words raw and honest. "I know I have no right to say this after how I treated you. I know I haven't won your love back yet, but I need you to know I love you with every fiber of my being, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it." The tears fell freely. "You hurt me so much. For 3 years I felt like a ghost in my own life." "I know," Dominic's voice broke, "and I will carry that guilt forever. But if you let me, I will spend every day making sure you never feel that way again. You will be seen, heard, valued, and loved as you deserve." Catherine studied his face, seeing sincere truth, a vulnerability she had never witnessed before. He was giving himself completely, offering his heart without reservation. And she realized she'd already made her decision. Somewhere in the last few weeks, between conversations and glances, her heart had begun to heal. And as it healed, it had begun to open again. "Baby steps," she said finally. "You promised baby steps." "Yes," hope shone in his eyes. "Then take one more step, Dominic. Kiss me." He didn't need a second order. His hands cupped her face reverently as he inclined his head, and his lips met hers in a kiss that held everything words couldn't express. 3 years of longing, weeks of tension, all spilling out into that moment. Catherine melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck, responding with equal passion. It was different from their first kisses at marriage, those brief, impersonal touches. This was real, fiery, a merging of souls. When they broke apart, Both panting, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. "My Catherine, my beloved wife." "Yours," she agreed softly. "But you're also mine. No more distance, no more walls. If we're going to do this, we do it together, honestly and completely." "Together," he promised, "always together from now on." The following days brought a visible transformation to Thornfield. Dominic and Catherine ate breakfast together every morning, discussing everything from politics to literature. They walked the gardens, dined together, and spent hours in the library discovering their shared interests. Dominic proved surprisingly well-read, able to debate complex topics with insight that challenged and delighted Catherine. She found herself laughing more freely, smiling without reservation, allowing the woman she had been before her 3 years of isolation to emerge again. 3 weeks after their initial reconciliation, an invitation arrived that would change everything. Lady Ashworth was hosting a ball to celebrate her daughter's engagement. As Duke and Duchess of Thornfield, their attendance was practically mandatory. Catherine eyed the invitation with apprehension. She hadn't attended a social event in 3 years, avoiding them with health excuses. The thought of facing high society filled her with dread. "We don't have to go," Dominic said, watching her. "But we should. People already talk enough. My continued absence only fuels gossip. Let them speak. Your peace matters more than society's opinion." Catherine looked up, something warming in her chest. "That's kind, but I fear I've done enough damage to Thornfield's reputation. It's time to face the world again." Dominic studied her. "Then we will go together, and if anyone dares treat you with less than perfect respect, they will answer to me." The fierce protectiveness in his voice sent a shiver through her. "I'll need a new dress, something that announces the Duchess of Thornfield is back." A slow smile curved Dominic's lips. "Then we'll send for the best dressmaker in London. I want you to shine so brightly that all eyes are on you." A blush rose to Catherine's cheeks. "Dominic, it's the truth. You are beautiful, Catherine. You always have been. It was I who was too blind to see." The dressmaker arrived 3 days later, bringing luxurious fabrics and patterns from the latest French fashions. Catherine chose a deep emerald green silk that complemented her eyes. Dominic insisted on being present for the final fitting. When Catherine emerged, her dress flowing elegantly, his gaze took her breath away. "You look stunning, absolutely stunning." "Isn't the neckline a bit too daring?" she asked, touching the edge that revealed more of her shoulders. "It's perfect." He stepped closer, fingers lightly touching her bare shoulder. "You're perfect." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world narrowed to just the two of them. Catherine saw something smolder in those amber eyes that made her pulse race. The night of the ball arrived shrouded in spring mist. Catherine allowed Anne to arrange her hair in an elaborate style, small pearls woven into the strands. The dress fit perfectly, and looking at herself in the mirror, she had to admit she had never felt more beautiful. Dominic waited at the foot of the stairs, magnificent in formal black. When his eyes fell on her descending the steps, something fierce and possessive flashed across his expression. "My Duchess, ready to face the lions of society?" Catherine placed her hand on his arm. "Ready as I'll ever be." The carriage ride was spent in contemplative silence. Catherine was aware of Dominic beside her, the warmth of his body, the occasional brush of their knees as the carriage rocked. "Catherine," Dominic said softly as they approached, "if at any time you wish to leave, simply tell me. You don't have to endure discomfort out of obligation." She turned to look at him, touched. "Thank you, Dominic. That means a lot." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "We're in this together. You're not alone anymore." The simple words brought tears to Catherine's eyes. For 3 years she had been deeply alone. Knowing Dominic was by her side now was an unexpected and precious gift. Ashworth Manor glowed with the light of 1,000 candles. Carriages lined the entrance, elaborately dressed nobles alighting. Catherine felt her courage waver. As if sensing her hesitation, Dominic squeezed her hand. "Breathe. You are the Duchess of Thornfield. Let them see your strength." When they were announced, Catherine held her head high, her smile serene. She was aware of the many eyes on them, the sudden increase in whispers. 3 years was enough time to fuel considerable speculation. Duke, Duchess, Lady Ashworth greeted them warmly, her curious eyes scanning Catherine. "What a pleasure to see you, Duchess. You look radiant." "Thank you, Lady Ashworth." As they moved through the room, Catherine was painfully aware of the attention they attracted. Old acquaintances approached with curious smiles, asking delicate questions. Catherine responded politely, offering vague explanations. Dominic remained constantly by her side, his hand on her lower back, occasionally intervening when questions became invasive. His protective presence did not go unnoticed. "May I have this dance?" Dominic asked as the orchestra began a waltz. Catherine accepted, allowing him to guide her to the center of the room. The moment their bodies aligned, Catherine felt the strange familiarity of his touch, the strength of his arm around her waist. "You're doing wonderfully," Dominic murmured. "Everyone here is watching you with either admiration or envy." "Or morbid curiosity," she replied dryly but smiled. Dominic spun her skillfully. "Let them be curious. Only what we know to be true matters." "And what is truth, Dominic?" His amber eyes held hers, intense. "That I was a fool for 3 years, that I have an extraordinary wife who deserved better, and that I am determined to spend the rest of my life righting my wrongs." Catherine's heart raced at the sincerity. "Dominic, don't answer now. Just dance with me, Catherine. Let me have this moment." So she danced, letting the music wash away her turbulent thoughts. On the periphery, she was aware of eyes watching, but in the center was Dominic, holding her as if she were precious. When the song ended, he didn't let go immediately. For a long moment they remained like that, bodies close, eyes fixed on each other. Then someone cleared their throat nearby, and the spell was broken. Catherine pulled away, her cheeks flushed, aware of how many witnesses had seen that intimate moment. Part of her was mortified. Another part couldn't bring herself to regret it. "Thornfield, it's been a while, man." The booming voice made Catherine stiffen. She turned slowly, her stomach sinking as she saw who was approaching. Lord Edmund Hastings, the man whose innocent conversation had triggered the whole tragedy 3 years ago. Dominic recognized him too. She felt the sudden tension in his posture. For a moment she feared a scene, a public confrontation that would destroy the fragile progress they had made. But then Dominic did something unexpected. He extended his hand to Hastings with a cordial smile. "Hastings, it's good to see you back from France." Hastings shook his hand enthusiastically. "And the lovely Duchess. My lady, you are even more beautiful than I remember." Catherine managed a polite smile. "Lord Hastings, I hope your travels have been fruitful." "Immensely." Hastings began to elaborate on his adventures, clearly oblivious to the underlying tension. Dominic listened patiently, his hand never leaving Catherine's lower back. When Hastings finally said goodbye, Catherine released a breath she hadn't known she'd been holding. "You were very polite," she said softly as they walked away. Dominic looked at her, something vulnerable in his expression. "Hastings wasn't to blame for my reaction 3 years ago. The fault was entirely mine, my irrational jealousy and insecurity. I won't repeat that mistake." The admission, public and undisputed, touched something deep in Catherine's heart. "That wasn't easy for you." "No," he agreed, "but some things worth having are rarely easy." The rest of the evening passed in a haze of conversation and dancing. Dominic never left Catherine's side, his protective presence a silent statement to everyone present. When they finally got into the carriage to return, Catherine was exhausted but strangely exultant. "Thank you for being by my side tonight," she said into the darkness of the carriage. "Always," Dominic replied simply. The word hung between them, full of promise. Catherine relaxed against the seats, aware of Dominic beside her. Their fingers were close on the seat between them, not touching, but so close she could feel the energy. Then gradually their hands met. Dominic's fingers intertwined with hers, holding with gentle firmness. Catherine looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. In the dim light she saw desire in those amber eyes, but also tenderness, and something that could be the beginning of true love. Her heart stumbled, hope blossoming despite all her caution. "Catherine," Dominic said softly, his voice husky, "can I—" But whatever he was about to ask was interrupted by their arrival at Thornfield. The carriage stopped, and the moment passed. Dominic helped her down, his hand lingering on hers. They walked together through the great hall. At the foot of the staircase that would take Catherine to her chambers, she hesitated. "Good evening, Dominic." "Good night, my dear," he replied, and then did something that completely surprised her. He brought her hand to his lips, his eyes never leaving hers as he pressed a kiss to her gloved fingers. "Sleep well." Catherine climbed the stairs on shaky legs, aware of him watching. In her chambers, she barely registered as Anne prepared her for bed. Her thoughts were completely occupied with Dominic, with the changes between them, with tantalizing and terrifying possibilities. The following days brought an intensification of their growing connection. Dominic became bolder with his gestures of affection, a touch here, fingers brushing hers there. Catherine found herself responding, allowing her defenses to begin to crack. They spent hours talking in the library, discovering shared interests. Dominic revealed himself to be well-read, capable of debating complex topics. She found herself laughing more freely, smiling without reservation. One afternoon, almost 3 weeks after the ball, Catherine was in the gardens when it began to rain unexpectedly. She ran for cover but was already soaked by the time she reached the greenhouse. Laughing at the absurdity, she removed her wet shawl. "Catherine!" She turned to find Dominic running toward her, equally soaked. He caught up to her, panting, his eyes roving over her with concern. "Are you okay? Didn't you catch a cold?" "I'm perfectly fine," she assured, still laughing. "Just wet." Dominic looked at her, and something in his expression changed. She was aware of how she must look, muslin gown clinging to her body, hair escaping in damp strands, cheeks flushed. "You're beautiful," he said abruptly, with an intensity that stole her breath. "Even soaking wet, you're the most beautiful creature I've ever seen." "Dominic," he took a step closer, then another, until he was almost touching her. "These 3 years have been hell of my own making. But now, having you this close, being able to talk, laugh, even see you, I realized that hell was having none of that." His hand lifted, fingers tracing her cheek. "You asked me what changed. Everything changed. You changed, or I finally changed enough to see you." He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers. "And I'm completely, irrevocably in love with you." Catherine held her breath, tears welling up. "Dominic." "I love you," he said, the words raw. "I know I have no right to say it after how I treated you. I know I haven't won your love back yet, but I need you to know I love you, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it." Tears fell. "You hurt me so much. For 3 years, I felt like a ghost." "I know," his voice broke, "and I will carry that guilt forever. But if you let me, I will spend every day making sure you never feel that way again. You will be seen, heard, valued, loved." Catherine studied his face, seeing sincere truth, vulnerability never witnessed before. He gave himself completely, and she realized she had already made her decision. In the last few weeks, her heart had begun to heal, and as it healed, it had begun to open. "Baby steps," she said. "You promised." "Yes," hope shone. "Then take one more step, Dominic. Kiss me." He didn't need a second order. His hands cupped her face as he bent his head, and his lips met hers in a kiss that contained everything. 3 years of longing, weeks of tension, all spilling out. Catherine melted against him, her arms wrapping around his neck, responding with equal passion. It was different from their first kisses. This was real, fiery, a fusion of souls. When they broke apart, both panting, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. "My Catherine, my beloved wife." "Yours," she agreed softly. "But you're also mine. No more distance, no more walls. We do it together, honestly and completely." "Together," he promised. "Always from now on." The rain continued to patter on the greenhouse's glass roof, creating a private world just for them. Dominic kissed her again, more gently, savoring it. When they separated, he removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. "Come on, we should get you inside before you catch a cold." Hand in hand, they ran through the rain back to the mansion, laughing like children. The servants who saw them enter, drenched and radiant, exchanged meaningful glances. Something fundamental had changed in the dukedom of Thornfield. That night, for the first time in 3 years, Dominic came to Catherine's chambers. She was sitting at her dressing table, Anne having just left, when she heard a soft knock on the connecting door. Her heart raced. "Come in." The door opened, revealing Dominic in a dark silk robe, his hair still damp from the shower. He looked hesitant, uncertain. "Can I stay?" he asked simply. Catherine stood, moving toward him. "Yes, stay." There was no rush this time, not like on their wedding night years ago when everything had been mechanical. Dominic wooed her with whispered words and reverent touches, rediscovering every curve as sacred territory. Catherine responded with equal tenderness, allowing years of loneliness to finally find expression. When they came together, it was with an intensity that left them trembling, tears mingling with kisses. It wasn't just physical communion, but the merging of two souls long separated. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the silk sheets, Dominic held Catherine as if she might disappear, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. "I never knew," he murmured. "Never knew what?" Catherine lifted her head to look at him. True intimacy. Not just the physical act, but the complete connection, feeling like two halves have finally become one whole. She smiled, her heart overflowing. "I never knew either. I imagined, I hoped, but reality surpasses any dream." Dominic kissed her forehead, then her nose, then her lips. "I will spend the rest of my life making you happy, Catherine. That is my solemn promise. And I will spend the rest of mine loving you. Despite everything, despite the pain and lost years, my heart chose you, Dominic. It chose you in the beginning, and it continues to choose you now." They fell asleep like that, bodies entwined, hearts finally aligned. For the first time in 3 long years, neither of them slept alone. The following weeks brought a complete transformation to Thornfield. The Duke and Duchess were inseparable, often seen walking hand in hand through the gardens, heads bent in intimate conversation. Dominic permanently moved his belongings to Catherine's chambers, refusing to spend another night apart. The servants commented on the remarkable change. The mansion, which had been silent and tense for 3 years, now echoed with laughter. The Duke, once somber, now smiled frequently. The Duchess, who had walked like a ghost, now glowed with renewed vitality. "I always knew there was hope," Margaret observed with satisfaction. "They just had to find their way to each other." "Better late than never," Mrs. Hendricks agreed, "although these past 3 years have been unnecessarily difficult." "But they made her stronger," Margaret observed wisely, "and perhaps he needed those years too, to mature enough to appreciate the treasure he has." 3 months after their reconciliation, Catherine made a discovery that filled her heart with both joy and apprehension. She was expecting a child. She told Dominic one night after dinner in their private quarters. He was reading correspondence when she approached, hands clasped nervously. "Dominic, there's something I need to tell you." He looked up immediately, catching the seriousness. He set the papers aside. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm perfectly fine. Better than fine, actually. We're having a baby." For a moment, Dominic simply stared at her, processing. Then pure joy burst across his face. "A baby? Catherine, are you sure?" She nodded, tears of happiness shining. "I saw the doctor this morning. He confirms that I'm approximately 3 months along." Dominic crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around. "A baby! We're having a baby!" He set her down gently, suddenly cautious. "Should I be more careful? Should you be sitting? What did the doctor say?" Catherine laughed at his sudden caution. "The doctor said I'm perfectly healthy and should continue my normal activities, although perhaps you should stop spinning me around." Dominic placed his hand on her still flat abdomen, wonder in his eyes. Our child, Catherine. You've given me everything. Your forgiveness, your love, and now this. I don't know how to thank you. You thank me every day, she said softly, covering his hand with hers. With every kind look, every caring touch, every loving word. You already thank me. They sat together, Dominic keeping her close, his hand never leaving her abdomen. Will it be a boy or a girl, do you think? I don't know, but I hope he or she has your eyes. I hope he or she has your kindness, Dominic countered, and your strength. God knows they'll need both to tolerate me. Catherine nudged him playfully. You underestimate yourself. You've become quite a wonderful husband these past few months. Just the last few months, Dominic said, guilt tinging his voice. I've wasted so much time, Catherine. Years we could have spent like this. She turned to face him fully. Let's not look back anymore, Dominic. We promised, remember? Only forward to the future we're building together. He kissed her softly. You're right. Forward to our child, our family, our life together. That night, Dominic was extraordinarily tender, treating Catherine as if she were made of precious glass. She protested with a laugh that she wasn't that fragile, but secretly she loved his protective care. The following months passed in a haze of happiness. Catherine's body gradually changed, her waist thickening, soft curves developing. Dominic was fascinated by the changes, often placing his hands on her growing belly, talking to the unborn baby. You will be so loved, he would say to Catherine's abdomen. Your mother is the most extraordinary woman, and I will do my best to be worthy of being your father. Catherine felt her heart overflow in those moments, seeing this completely new side of Dominic. Who could have imagined that the cold Duke would transform into such a devoted, expectant father? The birth came on a stormy winter night, almost exactly 9 months after their reconciliation in the greenhouse. Catherine had been uncomfortable all day, waves of pain gradually increasing. When she realized labor had begun, she sent Margaret to fetch the midwife. Dominic refused to leave her side, ignoring protests that it was inappropriate for the father to be present. This is my wife. I belong with her. Catherine gratefully grasped his hand, finding strength in his presence. The hours passed in a haze of pain, but Dominic remained constant, wiping her brow, whispering encouragement, sharing his strength. When the baby's cries finally filled the room at dawn, tears streamed down both their faces. The midwife wrapped the child in soft blankets and placed her in Catherine's arms. A girl, she announced with a smile, healthy and strong. Catherine looked in awe at the small pink face, the tuft of dark hair, the tiny clenched fists. She's perfect. Dominic leaned in, his finger gently tracing his daughter's cheek. Completely perfect, just like her mother. He looked at Catherine, admiration and love so intense it stole the last of her breath. Thank you for her, for giving us a chance, for loving me despite everything. You gave me a whole world, Catherine. We gave it to each other, she corrected gently. This little one is just the beginning of our life together. They chose the name Eleanor Rose, Eleanor for Dominic's deceased mother, Rose for Catherine's favorite flowers. The baby thrived, filling Thornfield with the sounds of new life. Dominic proved to be a devoted father, often found in the nursery holding his daughter and singing lullabies. Catherine watched these moments with a full heart, barely able to believe the complete transformation of their lives. The man who had ignored her for 3 years could now barely go an hour without seeking her out or mentioning his daughter. One night when Eleanor was 3 months old, Catherine found Dominic alone in the nursery, holding the sleeping baby. She stood in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt, simply watching. You will be so loved, little one, Dominic whispered. Your mother and I will make sure of it. And when you're old enough to understand, I'll tell you how your mother saved me, how she forgave me when I didn't deserve it, how she loved me back to life. He kissed the baby's forehead. You will have the most loving parents because I have learned from my mistakes. You will never know the coldness I inflicted on your mother. Only love, always love. Catherine felt tears well up in her eyes. She stepped in gently, placing her hand on Dominic's shoulder. He looked at her, his own eyes moist. You heard? Good, because every word is true. You saved me, Catherine. You brought me back from a dark place of my own making. She leaned in, kissing him softly. We saved each other. And now we have this. She looked at Eleanor. A family built on forgiveness and true love. Dominic carefully returned Eleanor to the crib, then pulled Catherine into his arms. A family. I never thought I'd have this. I never thought I deserved it. You deserve every happiness. We all deserve second chances, Dominic, and you took yours. They stood there in the dimly lit nursery, holding each other, watching their daughter sleep. It had been a long and painful journey to this moment, through years of loneliness and heartache, through pride and misunderstandings. But here, in this perfect moment, every tear and every moment of pain seemed worth it. Epilogue. 20 years later, Catherine Blackwood, Duchess of Thornfield, stood in her rose gardens, now far more extensive than when she had arrived as a young, nervous bride. Her brown hair showed silvery streaks, fine laugh lines creased the corners of her eyes, but she remained radiant with a beauty that came from within. Eleanor, now a young woman of 19, walked beside her, discussing her next venture into society. Christopher at 17 was at Eton, and Sophia at 15 was somewhere on the estate with her governess. Mother, Eleanor said thoughtfully, Lady Ashworth mentioned yesterday that you and Father had a rocky start. Is that true? Catherine paused in her work, considering. She and Dominic had long ago decided to be honest with their children about their past, feeling that the lessons learned were too valuable to hide. It's true. The first few years of our marriage were very difficult. Your father and I lost each other for a while, hurting each other out of pride and misunderstandings. But you found your way back, Eleanor observed. Yes, through forgiveness, patience, and a willingness to try again. Catherine looked at her daughter. Your father gave me the most precious thing, Eleanor. He gave me a second chance at our love, and I gave him the same. Is that why you two are so close now? Because you fought for it? Exactly. The things we fight for, the things we almost lose, we cherish more deeply. Your father and I wouldn't have the love we have now without going through those difficult years first. Catherine? Dominic's voice called from the gardens, and they both turned to see him approaching, still handsome at 48, his hair now generously silvered, but his amber eyes as piercing as ever. Talking about me again? He asked with a smile, reaching out to kiss his wife and then his daughter. Just telling Eleanor about our early years. Dominic wrapped his arm around Catherine's waist, pulling her close. Ah, yes. When I was a complete fool and almost lost the greatest treasure of my life. Father, Eleanor protested, though she was smiling. It's true. Your mother saved me from myself. Eleanor, remember this when you find your own love someday. Sometimes the best things come through the hardest struggles, and forgiveness, genuine and complete, can transform everything. Eleanor kissed both parents and excused herself, leaving Dominic and Catherine alone among the roses. Dominic turned Catherine in his arms, looking at her with all the love of 23 years together. I still marvel every day that you forgave me, that you gave me so many happy years after those terrible 3. Catherine touched his face tenderly. And I marvel that you found the courage to change, to open your heart. We were brave together, Dominic, and we built something beautiful. He kissed her, a kiss that held decades of love, of laughter and tears shared, of challenges overcome and joys celebrated together. I love you more every day. And I love you always. As the setting sun cast golden light over Thornfield Gardens, the Duke and Duchess stood embraced among the roses, a living testament that true love can blossom even after the coldest winter, that forgiveness can heal the deepest wounds, and that second chances, when embraced with open hearts, can create happiness beyond any dream. The end was truly just beginning, and their love story would continue, rich and deep, until their final days. A final message. Dear reader, as we conclude this journey with Catherine and Dominic, perhaps you'll find yourself reflecting on the winters of your own life, those periods when the heart remains on hold, when time seems frozen. Like Catherine, many of us know quiet patience, dignity in the face of indifference, love that persists even when unrecognized. 3 years may seem like a long time to wait for a new dawn, or even longer often, But in the wisdom of life, we know that time works in our favor, shaping us, strengthening us, preparing us. The beauty of this story lies not only in the rekindled romance, but in the truth it whispers to our spirit. It's never too late for the heart to awaken. It's never too late to see what has always been before us, to appreciate what time and habit have rendered invisible. May this story be a gentle reminder that even in the longest nights of your life, dawn is on its way. May your nights be blessed with peaceful sleep, protected by the certainty that each day brings new possibilities for reconnection, rediscovery, and second chances. And when the night seems long and your thoughts restless, remember Catherine, who maintained her grace and strength through 3 winters, only to discover that spring was waiting, patient for the perfect moment to bloom. The end. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, we invite you to subscribe, like, comment, and share our channel. Your support inspires us to keep creating more stories of love, redemption, and breathtaking twists. Help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and together we'll continue sharing tales that warm the heart. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another of our historical stories. Click and let yourself be enchanted by another unforgettable tale. With all our gratitude, echoes of romance.